casting a young Hugh Grant lookalike in a 90s style rom-com throwback? Yeah, they knew exactly what they were doing. Hey everybody, welcome to Mainely Movies. As part of my coverage of the 2024 Toronto International Film Festival, today I'm going to be talking about the 2024 French romantic comedy Jane Austen Wrecked My Life, which will be released in theaters on May 23rd. If you're new here, please consider subscribing for a variety of movie-related content, like reviews, rank lists, and trailer reactions. All my reviews include a breakdown of the pros and cons, my rating, and even some tailored film recommendations, so be sure to watch through to the end of this video for all of that extra content. Jane Austen Wrecked My Life stars Camille Rutherford, Charlie Anson, and Pablo Pauly, and was the directorial debut by Laura Piani. It tells the story of Agathe, a bookstore owner and aspiring writer who's invited to a writing residency and finds herself forming an unexpected relationship with a distant relative of Jane Austen. Jane Austen Wrecked My Life. With a name like that, I bet you could probably guess what this movie is. A literary-influenced and centric rom-com full of book references and plenty of humorously unlikely romantic scenarios. You know, the kind of movie that already has book girls' mouths watering and a lot of other people's eyes rolling. I know that 90% of you have already made up your mind about this movie based on that title alone, and I get it, but as the old idiom goes, never judge a book by its cover. I'm one of those usual eye rollers. I like my fair share of rom-coms, but when they get too literary or too showy with the big romantic gestures, I can't help but feel the pull of those ocular muscles. I've also never read a Jane Austen novel, or particularly enjoyed any of the movie adaptations, so this obviously doesn't really seem like a movie for me. But I'm always thankful for comedies, not to mention short movies, at film festivals. So I snagged a ticket to the TIFF world premiere of this little bilingual French rom-com by a first-time director, and ended up having a great time with it. I've talked about it many times in past reviews, but I'm always fascinated by the fluctuation of different genres, the rises and falls, the peak heydays and resurgences. Most genres have gone through this kind of ebb and flow, but romantic comedy is a genre that's largely maintained a solid presence throughout most of cinematic history. There's been variations within it, and different eras of the genre, of course. Screwball comedies of the 30s and 40s, musicals and movie star rom-coms in the 50s, screwball revival in the 70s, the emergence of teen rom-coms in the 80s, and so forth. Today, romantic comedies have largely been relegated to streaming, churned out with real, or streaming perceived, lower quality. There are some recent exceptions to this, of course, but when you think of rom-coms that are widely recognized as being good, when you ask somebody to name their favorite, chances are good they're gonna give you the name of a movie from what's known as the neo-traditionalist romantic comedy era. Spanning from the late 80s to the very early 2000s, these are movies about adults, set in the real world with nothing too fantastical or ridiculous going on, but incorporating classic romantic notions and tropes into a then modern setting. We're talking movies like When Harry Met Sally, Pretty Woman, Sleepless in Seattle, You've Got Mail. Jane Austen Wrecked My Life puts a literary and quite French and British spin on that kind of neo-traditionalist rom-com style. It's a really effective throwback, managing to be charming and warmly nostalgic without trying to be overtly referential, apart from the plethora of Jane Austen references, of course. I always take notes when I'm watching a movie that I'm gonna review, and when I was looking over those notes in preparation for writing this, I can't tell you the number of times I had written something along the lines of, feels like a 90s rom-com. That was written in an almost exclusively complimentary way, but that intense throwback feel does result in a lot of story predictability and fulfillment of genre tropes, which might end up being prime fodder for the eye rollers. But I still found it enjoyable nevertheless. The 90s rom-com style that this film channels may be familiar in its own ways, but it's a style that feels distinct and almost refreshingly retro when compared to most other romantic comedies coming out today. Although this movie feels unlike modern rom-coms, it never endeavors to be a film that drastically sets itself apart from its neo-traditionalist inspirations. It doesn't really do anything new or different, it just emulates that style 30 years later. With the writer's residency premise and the English countryside setting, it isn't too much of a stretch for the film to feel slightly timeless, or at least a bit more 90s. But as fans of the genre can tell you, romantic comedies have never just been about the story or setting. They're about the people, the relationships, the chemistry, and this movie's got that. Camille Rutherford's perfect in the role of Agathe, a lonely bookstore owner who dreams of romance and being a writer, but lacks the confidence to put herself or her work out there. So, after being invited to the estate of her favorite author for a writing residency, of course she's gonna find herself repeatedly crossing paths with Oliver, the smug and sarcastically dismissive great-great-great-great-grandnephew of her beloved Jane Austen. What begins as a relationship of disdain begins to morph into something else over the course of the residency. There's enjoyable, believable chemistry between these two characters, with plenty of fun banter and ever-present tension, sexual or otherwise. Theirs is a relationship full of classic rom-com misunderstandings and situational humor. Enemies to friends, friends to lovers, love triangles. This film really checks all the romantic comedy boxes, but does so in a way that remains fun, never falling into sigh and roll your eyes territory. Okay, almost never falling into eye-rolling territory. I do have to concede that the third act gets a bit messy. There's some intentional messiness from a relationship standpoint, but I have a feeling that the writing messiness was a little less intentional. There are a lot of loose ends that never get any sort of acknowledgement or conclusions, and even some of the main storylines suffer from very sudden plot developments. Honestly, it feels like there are some scenes that are just missing from the third act, either cut in the editing room or never filmed due to time or money. It has the distinct feel of a film that was forced to wrap up, so it ends up feeling weirdly rushed despite the slow burn nature of the rest of the movie. Despite that unfortunate feeling imparted by the final 10 or 15 minutes of the story, this still remains a very enjoyable movie. Jane Austen Wrecked My Life is a witty, feel-good rom-com throwback that'll leave you smiling and yearning for more classically styled entries in the genre. Alright, let's talk about the pros and cons. The biggest pro has got to be the performances, specifically by Camille Rutherford and Charlie Anson. There are a couple of secondary characters and plenty of tertiary characters filling things out at the writing residency, but the true rom-com core of this film is Agathe and Oliver. Rutherford and Anson really capture the specific personalities of their characters, and their bantery chemistry is spot on, even as it transitions from something antagonistic to something much more friendly. It also doesn't hurt that Anson has a bit of a young Hugh Grant look to him, really rounding out the whole 90s vibe. The second pro is how charming this movie is. Some people, especially those who don't like the genre, may be unimpressed by the predictable nature of the story, but I think most people who would actively seek out a movie called Jane Austen Wrecked My Life will find it to be nostalgically enjoyable. This is a real throwback in the vein of 90s neo-traditionalist rom-coms. It's funny, charming, giggle-inducingly romantic, just an all-around enjoyable feel-good film. On the con side, the biggest issue is the third act. Some will find this to be a con due to the predictability, but for me, the problems here are less story-based and more structural. This partly comes from the writing, partly comes from the editing and pacing, but there's just something about this third act that feels off. There's a rushed quality to it, with some big plot developments that feel especially sudden, almost like whole scenes were cut out in the writing or filming stage. It's not what I'd call an unsatisfying ending, but it doesn't feel like it's of the same caliber as the rest of the film for some reason. Before I give you my rating and recommendations, I want to remind you that if you're interested in buying Jane Austen Wrecked My Life, or any of the other films I mentioned today, I do have affiliate links for all of them in the description below. I get a small commission from anything you buy using one of my links, so I'd really appreciate it if you'd use them if you're in the market for any of these movies. I'm gonna give Jane Austen Wrecked My Life 3.5 out of 5 paws. It's a charming and funny throwback to 90s style rom-com Sense and Sensibilities. The story plays out a bit predictably, and the third act feels rushed, but with a set of very classic rom-com characters and situations, not to mention some great chemistry, this one's a real smile inducer. I would recommend Jane Austen Wrecked My Life to fans of neo-traditionalist romantic comedies, especially those from the 90s. This movie has that same kind of charming quality. It's funny with its situational humor and bantery dialogue, there's some great chemistry between the leads, and it just leaves you with the same kind of feeling. If you're somebody who hates all rom-coms, then this won't do anything to change your mind. But if you're a literary-leaning rom-com fan, then you'd be hard-pressed to find a movie more tailor-made for you. Also, I should note that you don't need to know any Jane Austen to enjoy this movie. But there are a lot of references and allusions to her novels strewn throughout this film, so Austen fans will definitely have a good time picking up on all of those. If you liked Jane Austen Wrecked My Life, I would recommend You've Got Mail. This Nora Ephron-directed romantic comedy stars Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan as two rival bookstore owners who unknowingly strike up an online romance with each other. In addition to mail, they've got great chemistry and plenty of fun banter-filled interactions. If you'd rather stick with Jane Austen, you might want to check out the Jane Austen Book Club. This film came a bit after the neo-traditionalist rom-com era, but features a group of friends who decide to read Austen's 6 major novels, only to discover parallels to the books in their lives and relationships. And if you liked the idea of an inspirational writer's retreat, you should watch Bergman Island. There's not much comedy to this romantic drama, but it focuses on a filmmaker couple who travel to Ingmar Bergman's former home, Faro Island, in search of inspiration and clarity about their own lives. Alright, a couple questions for you guys. Number 1, have you seen Jane Austen Wrecked My Life? If so, what'd you think of it? And number 2, what's your favorite 90s rom-com? Be sure to leave your answers in the comments below so we can get a discussion going. Alright, so if you got some enjoyment, insider information out of this review, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit that like button. And if you haven't done so already, please hit subscribe if you're at it to see more videos like this. Till next time, this has been Alyssa with Mainely Movies, the way life should be.